So if we're looking at the single joint, single limb exercises, the Voltra is amazing. I've been using the Voltra 1 now for quite a few weeks, and I've got some thoughts. So what I'm going to cover in this video is one of the ways in which the Voltra really exceeds one of the best use cases for this device. And that's going to be in single joint unilateral movements, which is just a fancy way of saying one arm or one leg at a time. So single joint unilateral exercises might be something like single arm tricep extensions or bicep curls, or cable lateral raises or Y raises. Typically, these are exercises where you're focusing on smaller muscle groups and with a lighter load. So a cable lateral raise replaces just a standard dumbbell lateral raise. And typically you're not using particularly heavy weights in that, especially not if you're using good form. What's great about unilateral exercises is that you can really expose any muscle weaknesses that you've got. You can also really focus on form when you're working one arm or one leg at a time. A lot of time they're used in a rehab setting, so very, very light loads. And typically they're done with bands or on a cable machine. So there's a couple of problems that both those setups have. Bands, the resistance is adaptive, not always in a good way. So what I mean is the longer the tension on the band gets, the further you pull it, the more the resistance ramps up. Now, there might be movements where you just don't want that. You want a continuous resistance, or even you want more resistance at the start and less at the end. But also with bands, there's not much control over the increment in resistance. You get different thicknesses of bands and they go up quite a lot. Difficult to get small jumps in between. If you're using a cable machine, you've got a similar problem in that if you're looking at very light loads, often the plates as you go up in that cable machine can be 5 to 10 kilos difference. Now you can get little things to go on to change how much that increment goes up, but it can still be far too big a jump. For example, you can have someone doing a cable lateral raise and they've got 7.5 kilos on, and they can do 10 to 12 reps. If you go up to 10 kilos, they can barely get 3 or 4. So the smallest jump up possible on that cable stack is still too much to keep that rep range high. So this brings me back to the Voltra and why it's so useful. On the Voltra, you can go up in 0.5 kilo jumps. So let's take the cable side raise on a Voltra. You could be doing 6.5 kilos resistance on the machine. You could do 12 reps. The following week, you could go up to 7 kilos and you might hit 10 or 11 reps. You could then stay at that weight till you hit 12 again, go up another 0.5 kilo. That 0.5 kilo jump makes life so much easier. It makes life easier to train. It makes life easier to program when you know you can do such minor increments. If we take it away from the Voltra for a minute and just think of just normal training in the gym, one of the things we have at Super Training Gym is we have fractional plates on the desk available. And these are especially used by our women bench pressers. Most of the time on their programs, when they're going up week on week, they're going up by 0.5 kilogram, not 2.5 kilograms, which is the standard in a commercial gym. If you're only benching 40 kilos and you go up 2.5 kilograms, it's a huge percentage difference compared to going up 0.5 kilogram. If you're benching 140 kilograms and you go up 2.5 kilograms, it isn't such a big deal. So having these small incremental changes is really useful. And we spoke about those bands, how the resistance goes up as you pull. If you want that, you can add that on a Voltra. You can have it as a band resistance. You can have it as a linear resistance by adding chains. With the latest software update, you can have an inverse chain. And what that means is, imagine you're pulling a cable out from the wall. So you've got the device here and you're pulling out. You can have it weigh more closer to the unit and less further away. So a heavier chain to a lighter chain. You can't do that in a gym. You can't do that any other way because you're breaking the laws of physics. You're reversing gravity. Only this type of resistance machine allows you to do that. The only other way you can do that in a gym is by a complicated plate-loaded machine with leverage adjustments. And even then, it's not perfect. You're stuck with those lever adjustments. Something like a prime row, which has the 3 different positions. But on the Voltra, you can make more micro adjustments to get it feeling just right. So if we're looking at the single joint, single limb exercises, the Voltra is amazing. If you're talking about tricep, bicep, shoulder, those smaller muscle groups that you're hitting, you can't really replicate what the Voltra can do in a gym. Doesn't mean you need it to improve, but it does make things more optimal. Now, I wouldn't say that you can just use it and take all the weights out. I probably would say, if I look at my own training plan using the Voltra, I use it for all shoulder work and all tricep work, but I still prefer the feel of a dumbbell for bicep work. And I think some of that comes down to the fact that working biceps is a lot easier because you can let your arm rest by your side and you can just purely work against gravity, or you can sit up on a bench in a preacher style and work against gravity. Whereas triceps is a bit more of a faff to get set up. You have to get your arm in a position overhead if you want to put it under stretch. You have to have a cable machine. You can do skull crushes lying down, but even then the resistance comes on and off really quickly just due to the biomechanics. So for shoulder and tricep work, I would probably prefer the Voltra over traditional resistance machines and or free weights. Something else to consider is the fact that you can alter the eccentric load with a Voltra, which again, you can't do in the real world. And what that means is as you're working, as you're lifting or shortening a muscle, you can have one resistance. So let's take a tricep extension. So I can have 20 kilos going out and I can have 25 kilos coming back. Or I can have 20 kilos coming out. I can have 30 kilos coming back. You can up the eccentric resistance as a separate variable if you want to. Let's say you're doing tricep extensions with 20 kilos, you do 2 sets of 10, and that second set of 10 is pretty much on the limit. There's not many reps in reserve left. You think, well, I don't really necessarily want to take the weight up next week, but what I could do is I could take the eccentric weight up next week and see if I can manage that. And then you might do exactly the same reps next week with more eccentric. You could take that up again. Then you could add the concentric the week after that. It just gives you this extra option where you are coping with more load. You are challenging the body differently. It's just another thing for you to adjust. I don't think there's another way of replicating what the Voltra does in just a standard gym setting. I think if you're rehab based, it takes on an even higher level of significance. I think the options, the control on resistance in rehab settings is just going to be unmatched. Obviously, I realize it's an expensive bit of kit for just single joint, single limb exercises, but I'm going to make some more videos about other things. But I just wanted to focus on that one area. There seems to be a big drive at the moment in the exercise science space about optimizing and optimizing every exercise. And the Voltra is the only way you can do it in these exercises. So let me know what you think. Let me know if there's anything specifically you want my opinion on. If you're thinking of getting one, do you want to ask me a question in the comments? I think the next video I'm going to do is going to be pulling exercises, so pull downs and rows, which, spoiler alert, is where the Voltra comes into its own. Thank you very much for watching.